Hey, hello and welcome to Moving Toward Rightful Presence, presented by Angie Castor. My name is Juliet Nyanwu, Program Specialist with the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project, and I am thrilled to be your moderator for this breakout session. Before we start this session, a few logistics. So this session will be recorded and archived on our conference agenda page after the conference for 1 month. Closed captioning is available by clicking on the CC button on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And the interpretation icon, which is located in the same area, will provide you access to Spanish translation if you need it. We will ensure the ASL interpreters are spotlighted along with the PowerPoint and the presenter. Please ensure that your volume is muted to avoid any background distractions during our presentation, and we encourage you to engage with others in the chat, and when possible, keep your cameras on so we can see all of your beautiful faces. And with that, Angie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. As Juliet mentioned, I'm here to share with you about our National Center on Inclusion Towards Rightful Presence, some new project that we were awarded at the Swift Education Center. So I'll be sharing a little bit about who we are, the work we're doing, and of course, talking and learning about what is rightful presence. So Juliet's going to help me with navigating the resources in the chat box and sharing information with you. And everything should be in the slides in terms of links that we'll be talking about today. But this one in particular is to a handout. So it's a Google Doc that's a forced copy. So it'll make you make a copy of the document, but just use it as a resource for our time together today. So just a few highlighted things for you to take your own notes on if you'd like. Again, my name's Angie Castor. I'm with the Swift Education Center, and instead of just highlighting me, I wanted to highlight all the people we're working with. And well, actually not all of them, but a good number of them. We recently had a couple weeks ago a national leadership consortium where we were able to bring a lot of great minds together to collaborate, to build information and share, and especially with this new work on rightful presence, developing more content and shared learning. So just some excitement in knowing there's a lot of teams behind one person presenting at a conference, at least for our organization. So a little bit about who we are at the Swift Education Center. We're a national research organization providing technical assistance to organizations, districts, county offices across the country, and really attending to student needs, of course, academic, behavioral, social, emotional. We are located or part of the umbrella, if you will, of the University of Kansas. As I mentioned, I'm in Kansas City, so I happen to be one of the kind of local people, about an hour away from the university, but where my colleagues and I are spread across the country in support. One of our key, I guess, a mantra is believing in how we change education and continuing to work towards that end and doing so together so that we can change the experiences that students have had, especially those that for the benefit of each and every student and their family, so that we can change patterns of marginalization that have been occurring for, as we know, many decades. So our time together today, hoping you walk away with a deeper understanding if you're new to, or not new, excuse me, to rightful presence. And if you're new to it, growing some new learning for you today about what is rightful presence. And of course, having some opportunity to engage with one another about this concept. And then at the end of our time, I have some examples of student and teacher and family perspectives of what this might look and sound like in a school. All right. Juliet, I can't, oh, there it is. Okay. I'm not able to see the chat readily. So if I miss anyone or if there's a comment, please feel free. Know that I'm prefer to share the mic. So if you have a thought you'd like to share with the entire group, please feel free to do so.
Thank you. Will do.
All right. Part of our engagement strategy for today is to use Pull Everywhere. So taking just a quick moment to get you in there, and then in a couple of slides, we'll actually engage in a poll. So there's a couple of ways you can get into the poll. If you're on your computer or laptop, you can type in pollev.com / Swift Center. There will be a couple of prompts that you can choose to ignore, and then it should get you right into the poll. You can also use your phone, which honestly is probably the easiest path. So you can text Swift Center, all one word, to the number 22333, and then you should be in. So we'll repost those directions in a moment, but just wanted to give you a second to see if anybody could get in there. If you're having trouble, just message us in the chat and we'll see what we can do to support you. All right, so enough of, hopefully we've gone through some housekeeping things. Let's get to some content. One of the things, as I mentioned, as an organization, probably like yours, hopefully you're in a pattern of continuous improvement. I think it's not something that ever ends, right? The word continuous, we're always growing. And I wanted to share with you this idea of, or defining, and in our case, redefining and growing our definition of equity. So we've been really intentional over the last 4 or 5 years about how we want to redefine what it means to have equity in education. So sharing this with you today is truly a living definition. And what I mean by that is we continue to review, edit it, and revise on an ongoing basis. So when I say it's living, it's because we're changing it pretty frequently. So today, our equity in education definition is discussing this as an intentional paradigm shift, one through which historically disenfranchised students and their communities build and retain, as you can see the highlighted, systemic power within education. Through that process, it's dynamic, responsive, and we want to attend to and build a pluralistic culture of teaching and learning. So thinking about how all of our identities, our histories come together and intersect. And promote then the health of individuals, how we have feelings of safety and being connected to one another, not only in the school as a place in the classroom where these happen, but ultimately the larger and wider community as well. So thinking about all of these pieces together and really highlighting that systemic power as part of our understanding and move towards having an equitable system. And then we have join justice. So this phrase of build equity, join justice, how we're thinking about, well, one, what is that? How do we define justice in the educational space? So thinking about this as truly a place where we have to join together. It's a collective act and collaboration so that we can move towards justice. And I really appreciate the last part of this paragraph here about holding space. So thinking about joining justice, it's holding space for us to be able to be together and create this collectively, so that students can really experience justice across the system. And not just students, actually, I would say adults in the system as well. So let's take the deeper look at those with some visuals. So many of us in education are pretty familiar with different visuals of movement from inequality to equality to equity. This is our take on that and changing it up a little bit. So take a minute to check out our visual, and want to open up the mic, certainly the chat box, to kind of hear from you what's resonating in this visual this morning.
I'm sharing a room today, sorry. I was gonna say what resonates with me and the image of justice is all access to all resources and supports. It's not limited.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah. I see there's quite a few coming in the chat right now as well. With justice, full inclusion. Thank you. Anyone else want to join on the mic, as I can't keep up with the chat box? They're flowing in readily now. The tools. Anyone else want to join me on the mic?
I posted on the chat, but I'll reiterate orally. I really appreciate that the last visual has multiple colors, because so often in conversations that I hear around equity or inclusivity is kind of a duality. You're either one religion or another, one color or another, one culture or another, one political viewpoint or another, able-bodied, not able-bodied. So I think that part of the discussion that, at least on my campus, is really remembering that there's so many more than the first one that comes to mind when you think of X, Y, or Z.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Malika, you want to join on the microphone?
Yeah, I just noticed in the justice picture that I thought was very interesting and powerful was the picture on top, which is referring back to the inequality and equality conversation that we originally come from. So there's also this experience of injustice. It's acknowledging where we come from, acknowledging past harm, and making sure that you're bringing that into the fold of the conversation. At least that's how I'm interpreting that, which is not often done as well. It's a very uncomfortable thing for people to see. We like to just kind of highlight what's happening now versus seeing historically how we've gotten here. So I thought that was important.
Absolutely. I appreciate you brought that up, that acknowledgement of the harm caused, as you said, as well as that connection to history, where we've been, and the impact that continues to show up. Thanks, Malika. Any others? Continue to look at it. You have it as a resource with the slides today. I'll share every time I discuss it with someone or a group of people, I learn and hear something new. It's the beauty of having visual support in creating or thinking about a concept. And so I'll share with you, oh gosh, I don't know what happened there. My apologies. We
Can
do
I
have a
ask really quick, what's on the top left? It looks like paintbrushes and paint. What's on the top left of the justice?
up there up on top of the bookcase.
Yes.
Yes. Paintbrushes. I think they're little bottles of paint.
Okay. They're
Each
just
with
not
a-
accessible. So what
Yes.
they're okay.
So I think that actually the link that this slide must have a link embedded in it. So this visual has a podcast attached to it. We'll have some links shared throughout today that we can help you get there. But the designer, the creator of this visual, talks through his thinking. It's a colleague of ours, of mine at the Swift Center, Wade Kelly, and sharing a quote of his in a moment. But this he gives us a little bit more into what he was thinking and sharing some of the symbology key. But of course, with any design, it's in the eye of the beholder and what we're interpreting. But these were some of his intentions as he was thinking about this visual and what it spoke to as he designed it. So some helpful pieces to add to your reflections. So as I mentioned, Wade is one of our partners here in our development. And would someone be willing to share this quote on the microphone with us today?
Inclusion doesn't fix systems. Diversity doesn't fix systems either. Only equity fixes systems, because equity expands power sharing, which exponentially increases an organization's problem-solving capacity and potential for cultural responsiveness.
Thank you. I wish I could see you all a little better to to thank you by name. Thank you for jumping on the microphone with me. So thinking about, I think what stands out to me in Wade's comment is both the exponential power sharing and this idea of, because we're here in an inclusive conference, thinking about, oh, we're not there yet. It hasn't fixed the system, and how we need to really make sure we're attending to how we're seeing and defining and acting upon creating equity across the spaces in classrooms that you're in, that I'm in, and across our country. So with a little bit about what we are as a center, the Swift Education Center, I want to speak to you about what this name is. So we were awarded the National Center on Inclusion. I guess it's been a year now. And with that award, we were asked if we could make a modification to the name. And that being, we wanted to add in the rightful presence. So it's the National Center on Inclusion toward rightful presence. So we're going to unpack this term a little bit, this principle, how we're thinking about it, how we're learning with and from others about it as well. And then after this, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we're working on as a center. First, to understand rightful presence, Wade has helped us in creating some and connecting with some animators for a visual, quick 50-second or so video to describe it. So one moment here.
What is rightful presence? Students come to school with wonderfully diverse identities that are influenced by family, community, and culture. Some of the young people we know and love seem to fit right in, as if the school and classrooms were created for them. Others, not so much. But we spend precious time and resources either trying to make them fit or punishing them if they don't. Rightful presence is about co-creating schools, classrooms, and curriculum so that educators can join students in an experience that is both meaningful and relevant to their lives.
This principle of rightful presence, this concept is actually one point of what you can see on this screen, one point of our Swift, our 10-point paradigm. So we're thinking about how rightful presence is part of the rest of these principles, but taken collectively, creating a restorative educational ecosystem. So while we're going to attend to rightful presence today, I wanted to make sure that I also included and spoke to how it's connected to each of the other 9 principles you see on the screen. And this is also part of your handout. So each of these are defined. They go pretty deep. Take some time to unpack and think about your reflection and learning. But again, we'll focus on rightful presence and thinking about how these concepts help to create or create the conditions in which a true restorative educational ecosystem can exist. So this is the visual you have in the handouts, but making the definition of rightful presence quite a bit larger. If you bear with me, I'd like to read that definition for us. And then we'll look at the pull everywhere to see what words stand out for you. We believe in an environment conducive to learning and personal growth is established first and foremost through the cultivation of a culture of true belonging. Efforts toward that goal must begin with the presumption of the rightful presence and inherent value of the disenfranchised. Inclusion efforts alone cannot bring about substantial change because they adhere to the same guest-host power dynamic that serves to normalize the existence of a group who's invited and a group with the power to invite. We're going to put that definition in the chat box. And then on the next slide, hopefully use our poll everywhere today to hear from you about what word or phrase stood out to you in that definition of rightful presence. At the top of this slide, if you came in a little late, didn't see the direction, how to join the poll is at the top. It's always fun to see these populate in real time. If you're unfamiliar with this, the word clouds, the idea, of course, is that the more often somebody types in one word, the bigger it gets. So the most common word identified here is belonging from that definition so far. But lots of good ones populating here. Thank you so much. Yeah. There's a lot of words in that definition that ring, that stand out and are powerful. So that's continue to populate that. I want to take us and keep moving us forward just with our short amount of time today, but I can certainly share the word cloud out back with our partners here with the conference to share back with you. So as you saw in that definition and begin to see in our definition here, we've highlighted, as you did, the ones that stood out most often, both to us as well as across groups that we're sharing this definition with, is the true belonging, inherent value, and that guest host power dynamic. So I want to take each of those and unpack them a little further, thinking about what do they mean and how do we begin to see each of these concepts. What does it look like? What does it sound like? How can we look for this in the schools that we work in classrooms and with the communities that we support? So let's first, we're going to continue with that poll. So it's going to populate with each of these so we can have some engagement about each of them. So let's start first with true belonging. Thinking about the idea of this is, where we feel the best, where we feel the most comfortable in a space, where I feel like I'm most able to be true to who I am and feel good in my skin in the place that I am. So hoping that we achieve true belonging through rightful presence. So let's think about what that means to you. And again, with our poll, we'll be looking across each of these. So first, let's look at the definitions here a little further. So thinking about what inherent value means. We know value isn't something we should have to prove. We should be able to be a part of a community, a classroom, a school without having to prove why I'm there. And thinking about our responsibility as educators to know each and every person's value for being in a campus and in a classroom. And that guest host power dynamic. So that's one of the tenets, I would say, of rightful presence, and really thinking about it as a shift, especially when we connect it to this idea of inclusion. As you see on the slide, the marginalized students, families, and communities should be integral in shaping and design of the educational systems. That means that we have to have equal partnership, which makes us think about the invitation that occurs often connected with inclusion, and the power dynamic that comes along with that. Who's doing the inviting? So let's use our poll everywhere again to think about, what does this mean to you? What does it make you think about with the places that you're working right now, the support of students across your campus or classrooms? So let's start with true belonging. What's it look like? What might it look like? Does it make you think of a particular student, family, classroom, adult that helps to make it happen? What does it feel like? So let's use our poll everywhere to see what's coming up for you today. What can true belonging look like and feel like? Valued, yeah. Seeing lots of safe and valued, yes, thank you. Great, needed, seen, comfortable. Okay. Keep them coming. I'm going to move on to the valued one, see what that inherent value, see what that brings up for us as well. All right, so with inherent value, how is it lifted? How do we learn, how do we make sure we know as educators each student's value in our system across classrooms, interactions? So thinking about what does that look and sound like for you? How's it lifted? Wonderful. Thank you all for engaging in these polls today. It's so wonderful to connect with your reflections. Point of involving and reaching out. Okay. Again, keep these coming. I'm going to move us into the guest host power dynamic and see what comes up with this as well. Okay. So with the guest host power dynamic, let's think about ways in which this shows up, depending on your role, your experiences, anything that comes to mind, really. What does it make you think about? How does it show up? How does it show up in our educational system? And I'll put that dynamic, or excuse me, the definition in the chat box as well. Oh, Juliet, you already did. Thank you. How does the guest host power dynamic show up? So there might be some, thank you for the questions coming in there. So there might be some ways in which I'm thinking about sometimes when a student with more significant needs, whether that's academically, behaviorally, whatever the need is, and the team supporting that student, likely sometimes an IEP team, maybe it's a 504 team, whatever the team is, by whatever name, is working to have for that student to have more experiences with their peers in the general ed setting. Sometimes there's some navigation that has to occur for that student to get more experiences. So thinking of, that's an example that comes to mind for me as I think about the student has to be invited in and really allowed in to a space. So now I see more examples populating as I'm talking through what comes to my mind, but yeah, being invited, even just having I see no true seat. I was just going to say that having a space in the classroom, having their name on a cubby, those are all examples of how it can or doesn't show up in our schools. Yeah, thank you. Keep them coming. Okay. Yes. Taking a look at this one that just posted, you can't truly belong if you're a guest. You're just a person who doesn't really belong. And thinking about, can I really be myself in that space as well? Thank you all. Keep those coming as we have with the rest. Continue to, you might be resonating on them for a little while, so feel free to come back to these or even post in the chat as you're reflecting for the rest of our session, and just sharing with you about many, if you're like me, kind of reading a lot of Brene Brown's writings, but she had written about true belonging. It doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. So it's a nice reminder of this connecting to belonging as an essential piece of rightful presence and how we can make sure we're able to do that in the spaces we are as individuals, but also creating those spaces for the students with whom we work. So I wanted to share with you a little bit more about what we're doing as the National Center on Inclusion towards Rightful Presence. And Juliet has we have a website where we're housing And we'll be posting more resources too that we'll put in the chat box. You can see some of the information from today, but know that we're continually building that out and taking this idea of rightful presence came out of work. You can see a couple of the authors here, Calabrese, Barton, and Tan. And they apply this idea of rightful presence, and much of their research is around educational equity, but specifically at the classroom level and in work with concepts related to STEM learning. And so thinking about our work and how we're bringing rightful presence into this idea of extending and moving beyond inclusion is thinking about more of a system level application to rightful presence. So thinking about how we can work together to make present the students who've been made missing in school. And just kind of a historical note, the little girl you see on the screen, we were at Swift Education Center was awarded this grant 2010 or 11 for the first 5 years, and we got it again the second time. So this little girl was part of the original grant that we were engaged in across 5 states. She's probably in high school right now. We need to do some work to find out how she's doing across her community. So a little bit about the current work as this Rightful Presence Center. So we have several levels of support that we're able to engage in. And intentionally using language related to tiered support. So for everyone, use of that website. So thinking about how we'll be posting information, we'll have an implementation guide to help build rightful presence that everyone will have access to via that website, and connecting to and learning from and with knowledge development sites. So we'll be sharing information about what we learn with them. The second level is with targeted technical assistance. So we have about 15 people every year, 15 partners, I should say, that we'll be able to work with at least 2 days each year. And then intensive support, which is with model demonstration sites. I'll speak more about in a second, but that's the more direct support that we're doing with a small group. So that targeted technical assistance, again, if you're interested in something like that, there's some information or an email here. It's also probably on that website, but it's for anyone, a state level, a county agency, your individual school site, no cost to you, and lots of ideas of how we can work with you to help build that if you're interested. Some ideas on the screen there about ways in which we could have group facilitation, data reviews, you know, all the things that can help us grow in that rightful presence. In the intensive support, you can see we've been able to connect with and partner with 4 states, one of which is California. So that's really exciting to be, another reason exciting to be with you all today. So the other 3 include Delaware, New Mexico, and Wisconsin. Each of the states are in different places in terms of site selection and the districts partnering, but definitely near the point of being able to talk about those widely. So more to come there. But know that some of the intentional work that we're looking at with specific looking at rightful presence and the goals of this partnership is to think about, of course, capacity development. And I say that in that way because of the importance of you know, providing any level of technical assistance is hopefully to change system-wide practice. And so being able to provide capacity efforts that strengthen inclusive practices, I think, is essential to the longevity and sustainability of this kind of work. Secondly, thinking about how teams at the school level are working on their implementation of inclusion. You see the terminology of dynamic learners here on these, a couple of these goals, and that's a term we're using to identify students with the greatest needs. I think the terminology in the federal language is students with significant cognitive disability. So there's those with the greatest needs are the focus of this this project, this work together, and being able to see in that goal 3, their more inclusive time, of course, engagement and instructional quality. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, leveraging UDL practices, tiered support, lots of things that help us to, we know from research, help us to move the needle and see dynamic learners have greater success across as a result of more inclusive type practices and ultimately towards rightful presence. I wanted to share with you a little bit about why California was part of desire to be able to work together. One, we've been in partnership, Swift Education Center has been in partnership for a little bit now with some work on MTSS. We know there's a commitment to both MTSS as well as UDL. The connection to our aims together and wanting to build equitable systems and seeing how the state has continued to be in support of implementation of a project like this, with ideally scale up over time. So thinking about the wider impact beyond the 2 districts that we'll be working with. In our remaining time here today, I wanted to share some information, actually some quotes from parents, students, and faculty at a couple of the knowledge development sites that we're learning with and from. So these next few slides are quotes, but my hope is we can think about them and maybe you can use the chat or make some connections with what we're learning about with rightful presence. So Keisha is a parent of a student, an elementary student with autism. And she's sharing with us that for her, I'll just read her quote directly. For me, when my son first started, it was a huge, huge transition for us because he just would not want to be around people. It was very hard for him to transition, and I was really worried. I was scared. I had many sleepless nights. Being here, I felt so welcomed. I've seen the growth in him over the 2 years, and now he's excited to come to school because he lets us know. When he started, he had very little words. Now he's able to communicate his basic needs. So yes, so I've seen the growth. So Keisha's talking about her students' experiences in a more inclusive type of environment and classroom. Next, we have a student. So a couple of these knowledge development sites are in the, I believe they're both actually in the LA area. Wish, you can see this one's from a student at Wish Academy High School, as well as I believe Chime is the other one too that we're learning from. So this student talks about not really connecting to why his school is different, his or her school is different. So he says, honestly, unless somebody tells me my school is a fully inclusive school, I don't really make that connection. It's just normal for us. It's living in this awesome environment where not only do people have all abilities, but also people have different learning styles and different academics. It's just amazing to see that we've grown up in this environment. I'm wondering with those two quotes we've taken a look at, what's coming up for people and making connections to true belonging, inherent value, even the guest host power dynamic. Anything coming up for you? So Dustin is a 5th grade teacher at Wish Elementary. I won't interpret. Let me just read this for a moment. So throughout my lesson, throughout my planning, throughout my day-to-day, I'm always having the mindset of how can I include all of my students? If I'm providing a lesson and I'm noticing a student is struggling, I think to myself, what can I do better? Include them within this process. Is there an adjustment I can take? Is there a new approach I can try? Is there a resource I can get? Is there someone I can reach out to? And a lot of times I can find this solution within the community of Wish in some way or another. another staff member at Wish Elementary, Pilar, is the instructional coach. So she talks about utilizing lots of approaches. And she says, I'd say most of our teachers are really utilizing UDL concepts when designing lessons and then using that differentiation piece as needed for specific kids who either need significant extensions or significant accommodations or modifications. Again, I'll give you a moment to think what's resonating for you on either of those. I apologize if you can hear my dog in the background. I had an opportunity to visit, actually talked to Pilar about a month ago, visit their campus. And I think what's so, thank you, Deborah. I think what's so amazing about these two communities, one, their community, but two, this piece that the teacher was talking about, Dustin, this idea of a mindset. And it makes me think about how many times mindset gets in the way of trying to do anything in school sometimes, but just implementation in generally. And so mindset can often be the barrier of trying, of moving and implementing and trying to do these good things, especially when we're thinking about this particular group of students and really having true belonging in a school and in a classroom. Yeah, mindset is the foundation. So thank you for that. I'm going to return to the visual we started with, and wondering, again, thinking about your experiences in your classroom, whatever your current role is in support of students learning. Now that we've kind of unpacked a little bit about Rightful Presence, we're just getting our feet wet. What does this make you think about now? This visual.
I'm just curious because the picture still kind of depicts that justice is out of reach for some people. Was that intentional by the artist?
Where can you show me or tell me where what part of the visual makes you think that?
Because you can't reach the very top tier.
Oh, got you. Way up above the shelf. I don't think that was intentional. No. But having more accessibility up to those tools up there, the paint and the paintbrushes.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think it was intentional. No. That's a good observation though. Good question. So with the visual and our thinking about learning with Rightful Presence, particularly the guest host power dynamic, I think what's coming up for me today, and as I'm connecting to the justice part of the visual, as I'm thinking about decision making around what things land on the shelf, identifying that accessibility piece you just mentioned. But I think even when I think about how decisions get made about tools and resources, who's invited as part of those considerations, what voices are included in that decision making. Something coming up for me today. Just watching the chat box, giving you a second. So as we wrap up our time together today, Alex, thank you for mentioning that. Let me go back one moment. So they mentioned about they're all able-bodied. Yes. In this visual, they are, or seemingly so, right? Hoping we, with that Rightful Presence video, attended to that a little differently, but yes, you're right. As we think about the work ahead of us, and certainly as we're learning and growing and looking towards ways in which we enhance and move towards rightful presence, making sure we keep this sentiment from James Baldwin about we've got to be as clear-headed about human beings as possible, because we are still each other's only hope. So thinking about our collective commitment towards this end and this work of moving beyond inclusion to true rightful presence for every student, and especially those who have been marginalized and pushed out of schools for whatever the reason. We do have a few minutes here before we close out. I'm just wondering if anyone would like to share on our microphone or in the chat box about questions you're having, or if you want some more information or go back to a concept to share with the whole group. We have some open mic time at the moment. And Juliet's provided, if you need any of the links and resources we've shared today, those are embedded in the slide deck that's been shared, but also certainly can repost some of those in the chat box now if you'd like to grab them.
So if there aren't any questions or comments, I just want to thank you, Angie, for an amazing session. And thank you to everyone in attendance for your commitment to our students with disabilities and their families, all the way from birth till childhood and beyond. The slides and resources from the presentation can be accessed in the session description section of the VFAIR's agenda page. So if you didn't catch it in the chat, know that you can catch it in the VFAIR's agenda page. If you have any additional questions, please head over to information booth. Be sure to join us for lunch until 12:40. And then after that, we have our closing remarks and then our closing keynote from 12:40 to 2 p.m. As a reminder, you connect with other attendees in the social lounge and stop by and take a selfie in our photo booth. Don't forget to share on your socials and tag @SIP Inclusion, or use our hashtag SIPCon 2024. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you all enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Terry, Judy, Luis, VFAIR's. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for attending. Enjoy your lunch.
Take care.